All right, let's talk about the second memory technique, and that is the PEG system, which usually helps us for memorizing numbers. Now, I first came across this in 2012, in the summer before starting university, because I stumbled across a book by a magician called Harry Lorraine, which was something about like how to develop a superpower memory. And I decided before my first year of university, I thought to myself, you know what, I want to learn these techniques for memorizing stuff because I know I'm going to have to memorize lots of stuff during medical school. And so I spent a few weeks just like committing this sort of system to memory. I ended up not really using it in my first year, but it ended up coming pretty handy in my second and third year. The PEG system, it's based on the concept that we, as humans, we have a very poor memory for numbers and for words, but we have a very good memory for concepts. Like we can imagine a chair in our minds, but it'll be a lot harder to remember the number, I don't know, 55 or 1984 or whatever, because we don't have like numbers and words are like abstract things, and our brain is not very good at remembering abstract things. Whereas if you can visualize something, then it's a lot better at remembering that. So the idea behind the PEG system is that you want to convert numbers into words, and then you can visualize the words. And this is the Evernote document I made in 2012. It was, oh, here we go. This one from in August 2012. I said projects for summer, magic, hypnosis, memory, university challenge. I thought I was going to be on university challenge, so I tried and do some like quiz stuff, Japanese YouTube video. I think I wanted to make a YouTube video back in 2012. Damn, got into that game 5 years too late. Anyway, and I said memory, use Harry Lorraine system, and this is Harry Lorraine's kind of PEG system for memory. And I think in Darren Brown's book, Trick of the Mind, he's also got another PEG system, but this is just one of them. So here's how it works. So the sound for 1 will always be a T or a D, and you imagine the letter T has 1 downstroke. The sound for 2 will always be an N, because if you imagine like an N has 2 downstrokes. 3 is M, because M has 3 downstrokes. 2, 1, 2, 3. The sound for 4 will always be R, which is the final sound of the word 4, so 4 is R. 5 is L, which is a Roman numeral for 50. 6 is ch, sh, j, etc. So, you know, that sort of sound, which is sort of like the letter J turned around. Sound for 7 will be a K, the sound for 8 will be F or V, sound for 9 will be P or B, the sound for 0 will be S or Z for 0. So that means if we need the number 1, we're thinking of the sound T. The number 2, T or D. Number 2 would be the sound N. Number 3, M. And so if we want to turn those into images, 1 becomes Thai, because the only sort of consonant sound in Thai is just the T. So we know Thai is 1. 9 is B, because the only consonant sound in 9 is in B is a B, and we know B is 9. But if we're combining numbers together, let's say we're doing 54, that's the word lure, because we know 5 is L and 4 is R. So lure, liar, lure. So I would probably convert, I would be thinking either lure or lyre as in the type of musical instrument. The point is it's got 2 consonant sounds, the L and the R. So I know that when I think of lure or lyre, I'm thinking of the number 54. Equally, you know, 76. We know that 7 has a K sound based on this thing. And the way I remember it is that 7 sort of looks like a K, sort of. And if we look at the number 76, we know that 6 is the soft J or Ch or Sh sound based on what we've memorized with our PEG system. So we know that cage will be K, J, which is 76. And so if we imagine an image of a cage, we know that that must correspond to the number 76. So this takes a little bit of effort, right? So if you want to use this properly, you want to get it to a point where it's completely second nature. And I'm quite rusty in this because I haven't had the need to memorize this sort of stuff kind of recently, but I do kind of wish I'd stuck with it, because I had this pretty much down like the back of my hand in my second year of med school. And the way I would use the system is when I was trying to cram for my second year essay exams. And I knew that in our second year, to get a decent mark in your essays, you need to include references to different scientific studies. And I sort of knew what the studies were, but I never knew what the name of the author was or what year it was in. So, you know, Karpik and Blanc 1972, or Hodgkin and Huxley 1942, or whatever. So what I did is for particular essays, I sort of built up a story. And so I memorized the year of the paper by using the PEG system. So let's say, you know, it was 1976. That's L, that's L, B, K, J. So I would have thought of something like lip cage. So sort of the image in my head is like, you know, a really big set of lips inside a cage, and it's huge. And so if I imagine lips in a cage, that's lip cage, which is 1976. And if I was looking at, I don't know, Robinson 1976, let's say that was the name of the paper. It wasn't, but let's say it was. I would imagine a friend of mine from primary school called Eleanor Robinson, and I would sort of imagine her sort of like holding up this big cage that had lips in it. So I would know it's Robinson 1976, Robinson lip cage. And then I'd be able to associate that with the story of the study. And I managed to do this like the night before the exam, when I was like, oh crap, I don't have enough experimental evidence. But thankfully I had this PEG system in my head. And so when it came to writing these essays, I could recall the PEG system in my mind and recall the images I had for these things. And I think that had I tried just kind of brute forcing this, you know, it's really hard to remember Robinson 1976 because like how do you even remember that? But I managed to remember it to the point where I got a first in my essays for that year. And I think, you know, I would attribute some of that success to this PEG system because it helped me get that final little bit of spice that we needed to add to our essays to make them be first-class essays. So yeah, PEG system, it does take a bit of effort to get set up with it, but then you can kind of apply it to anything. And you know, I'm a magician as well, if you didn't know. I do close-up magic. I used to perform in balls and stuff at university. And one of the techniques that magicians have in their arsenal is kind of mentalism. And some aspects of mentalism are associated with memorizing certain things very quickly, or like memorizing the order of a stack of cards or memorizing the order of a deck. And one way of doing that is by associating, let's say, number 53. So that would be L and M with like loom or lime or something like that. And then if I have a picture of a lime in my head and I associate that, I don't know, with the Jack of Hearts, I can imagine the Jack of Hearts eating a lime. I know that the Jack of Hearts is at position 53 in the deck, for example. So it sort of comes in handy in those sorts of ways. And I think that's why Darren Brown talks about it in his book, Trick of the Mind. But Harry Lorraine talks about it in his book about developing a superpower memory. And apparently this is one of the techniques that world memory champions use when they're memorizing things like the digits of pi or like the order of a deck of cards. They use the PEG system because we know that memorizing numbers is really hard. But if we can turn those numbers into images and do it sort of on the fly, then it's a lot easier to memorize the images. So that's the PEG system. I don't really use it much these days, but it came in handy when I was in university. So something worth experimenting with if you like. And I will link in the description video, blah, 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 to Harry Lorraine's system, or you can just use this that's basically on this Evernote document, which I'll also stick a link in the notes bit of this class. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.